You gotta watch what you're doing. Yeah. You gotta watch what you're doing.
Passive smoking. Both oral and urine samples from non-smokers in the presence of cannabis smokers have tested positive for THC. The oral samples are clear after about 30 minutes, but urine samples in some cases have tested positive even 3 or 4 days later. There's a lack of research on this, but one non-using young woman at a party, which was thick with cannabis smoke, had no recollection of driving home. But she looked out the window and her car was on the drive and she was getting out of bed. She had no recollection. Apart from driving, the combination of cannabis and alcohol is very dangerous and also very common. If a person drinks too much, they can overdose and die. The respiratory muscles stop. But often they're sick and they get rid of some of the alcohol. If they use cannabis as well, the vomiting reflex is inhibited, preventing them from being sick. And cannabis as medicine. Well, for a start, no medicine prescribed today is smoked. Medicines by law have to be pure, single chemical substances so that their actions on the body are predictable and controllable. Heroin and cocaine are pure substances. But cannabis contains around 400 different substances, rising to 2,000 when it's smoked. There are about 60 cannabinoids unique to the cannabis plant. Now these can be extracted, purified, clinically tested in trials on animals and humans, may take years, and if suitable, licensed for medical use. And this is the correct procedure. Pure synthetic THC, which is called Nabilone in the UK, Marinol in the United States, has been licensed for years to prevent sickness in cancer treatment and stimulate the appetite in AIDS patients. But doctors don't like it. There are too many side effects. The warning on Marinol says, THC encourages both physical and psychological dependence and is highly abusable. It causes mood changes, loss of memory, psychosis, impairment of coordination and perception, and complicates pregnancy. This was about 20 years ago. They still haven't caught up with this. It's estimated that someone with glaucoma, you know, the pressure in the eyes, would need about 6 joints a day to reduce the pressure in the eyes. Yes, it would work, but they'd be permanently stoned. They'd hardly be useful members of the community. They wouldn't be able to drive, work, or do anything. Penicillin comes from molds that grow on bread or food or wherever. It's like telling someone, go and eat some mouldy old bread to get your penicillin. It's the same argument. A cannabis-using lawyer, American lawyer, said in 1979, we will use the medical marijuana argument as a red herring on the road to full legalization. That was the start. Richie Cohn, his successor at NORML, National Organization for the Reform of the Marijuana Laws, said, medical marijuana is our strongest suit. It's our point of leverage which will move us towards the legalization of marijuana for personal use. Does it lead on to other drugs? Well, tobacco, alcohol and cannabis can all lead to the taking of other drugs. If a person starts to smoke cigarettes, then the technique of smoking is learned. In a Murray poll, it was found that 50% of smokers had tried an illegal drug, but only 2% of non-smokers. One New Zealand study found that weekly cannabis users were 60 times more likely to progress to other drugs. The more they used, the greater the risk. Almost 100% of heroin users started on cannabis, at least the ones I've spoken to. And a new paper from the New Zealand Dunedin project, which is a 25-year-old longitudinal study from birth, has concluded that the use of cannabis in late adolescence and early adulthood emerged as the strongest risk factor for later involvement in other illicit drug use. Peer group pressure, dealers offering other drugs, curiosity, they can all be factors. But ongoing research in Sweden has found that in animals, the use of cannabis seems to prime the brain for the use of other drugs. In other words, the brain's altered and made much more susceptible and sensitive. Among 14 to 15-year-olds in the UK, cannabis is still the drug of choice, and the average age of first use has now dropped to 13. I've written a fully referenced book on cannabis, scientific references. It's quite large, about 100 pages, for the Social Justice Policy Group of the UK Conservative Party, and it's available on www.urad.com. It's heavy going, but it's got all the references if you need to meet any challenges. I'm quite happy to send. I know there's so many facts there that you won't possibly have got them all down. And if you want, if you give me your email address, I will send you this talk that I've just given, very willingly.
You know you never get in. You gotta watch what you don't.